Welcome, badasses, to another episode of the Badass Ladies Club. My name's Laurie. I'm here with my friend Jessica.
Hey, guys.
And we are most excited to bring you today's episode with our friend Julie Murphy, who is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of a number of young adult novels, but namely Dumplin, which is a Netflix series now, Puddin, Ramona Blue, Side Effects, may vary, like lots of books that we're going to talk about. But before we get into our interview with Julie, Jessica's going to talk about our very special Badass of the Week this week.
Y'all, this Badass of the Week is like one of my favorite people. So we're calling out Jonathan Van Ness, which is kind of a full circle moment with Julie as well. But if you don't know, if you're living under a rock and you don't know who Jonathan Van Ness is, he's commonly known by the initials JVN. So if we reference JVN, that's who we're talking about. They are an American hairdresser, podcaster, activist, author, and television personality from a little Netflix show you might know called Queer Eye.
Only my favorite show ever.
I listened to their audiobook.
Yes.
And it was so phenomenal, extremely vulnerable, over the top. Yes. It was so good. I loved every minute of it. I love their fashion, their personality, their big heart, and just all around great human being. And just, there are no words for JVN.
It's overwhelming. I love all things JVN, but I especially love his dog Pablo. I'm just gonna say, like,
Pablo and all the cats.
Little Pablo kind of reminds me of my dog Bowie a little bit, and their story. So love JVN. Happy Badass of the Week, buddy.
Yeah.
Get yourself on this podcast.
And obviously the invitation is open, JVN, if you're listening, and we would love to send you some stuff. But also, Julie, is he on the same? Do y'all have the same publisher? Is that what it is?
I think that JVN Jonathan is at Harper. I'm not 100% sure, but I had the incredible opportunity to do a book signing with Jonathan at Book Expo America in New York a few years ago. And they were sitting a few chairs down from me. And of course, like the line to see them was like astronomical. And I had like a line that I was signing through as well. And I was just like trying to tell every publicist that walked past me, I was like, I have to be Jonathan. I have to be Jonathan. I know everyone is saying this, but please, if Jonathan leaves, please let them know. Because they were like, I mean, the thing about Book Expo America is it's like the one book event every year that like really famous people go to. So like that same year I met Debbie Harry, like it was just a wild year. So I finally got to meet Jonathan backstage. And the reason like my in was like, you like did like a whole like live stories on your Instagram when you watched Dumplin. And I just want to let you know, I saw that and it was so cool. And it meant so much to me. And so anytime you meet like a really famous person like that, it's always good to have like some kind of like connection so that there's like, you know, so they meet so many people, but just so that your moment with them is just a little bit different. And so Jonathan was immediately like, oh my gosh, I remember this and I love this about it. And then I ended up like connecting with his assistant too, or their assistant too. And anyways, the coolest part was when Jonathan touched my hair. Jessica,
I know. I was telling Laurie, I will never forget that moment because at the time I had an Apple Watch and I was shampooing in the shampoo room and I got these messages from you and I was looking on my watch and I see a picture of Jonathan Van Ness with his hands in your hair. And I was like, and I just like almost fainted and like my heart was pounding. And anyway, it was a great moment for me. I know it was a better moment for you, but it was a great moment for me.
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think Jonathan said I had incredible texture. So
stop it.
You know, if you don't know, Jessica does my hair.
Yes. So yes, let's get to this.
Bring it back. Yeah.
Yes. Julie Murphy, if you've also been living under a rock, is an incredible human being. As Laurie mentioned, she's a #1 New York Times bestselling author of young adult novels and other things too. You have other collections that you've done, but you're also a committed activist supporting plus size and LGBTQ communities. And so I wanted to touch a little bit on how I know Julie and how she got into my orbit. We met when I was probably 15 or 16 years old. Right. And we worked at Torrid together,
Wow.
at the Parks Mall in Arlington. That is where it all started. And for those of you who don't know or may not have one near you, Torrid is owned by Hot Topic Incorporation, but Torrid is the plus size part of Hot Topic Incorporated. And it was a good team. It was a really fun place to be, but I learned very early on that I was different, that obviously working at a plus size retailer, being the size that I am, that it just became very apparent to me how there was a lack of, I don't know if trust is the right word, but the women would come in and be like, not you, someone else, and they would go to another employee who probably understood more like how things fit and where they were coming from. And so as much fun as I had there, I don't think I was very successful is what I'm trying to say.
You were fantastic. I mean, I think that like you were like the string bean of a girl in a plus size retailer. And you are like really like on the outside without anyone knowing anything about you. People just see you from afar and be like, that's a really traditionally pretty girl. She's thin. She looks like she has her shit together. So I think that like when like, especially like this was like 2002, 2003, 2004, plus size options, it was very even more limited than it is now. And it's definitely expanding in a really big way. But it was, back then it was like, you could go to Macy's, Lane Bryant, or Torrid, basically.
Yeah.
And so to walk in and see like a plus size person there, like a straight size person there, it was automatically like, what is she doing here? Does she know what she's talking about? Also, she doesn't know that like I need these jeans to fit a very specific way. Like fitting a plus size body is just totally different. But I think that like you were there and like always cool and gracious with people not being the nicest to you at times because they just didn't know what to make of you. But you were always really fantastic and so much fun to work with. And we've kept in touch.
I know. And now here we are as adults, and you're a super successful author, and I get to do your hair every 6 to 8 weeks. And I love it when you're in the salon. I love visiting with you. It's awesome.
You're a super successful podcaster and like hairstylist. So
Thanks, Julie. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your career. We'll start with this. What led you to writing in general, and how do you develop these rich characters that are so relatable and real?
Yeah. I hated writing growing up. It felt like homework to me. It still sometimes does. But I really, really wanted to be involved in arts in whatever form. Jessica and I ran in a lot of the same circles growing up. Lots of artsy fartsy kids in the suburbs. And so I was constantly looking for the kind of art that like would define me and the kind of art that I could claim as my own. And I tried actual art. Turns out I was really bad at that. And I tried choir. I tried theater. I loved theater and I loved dancing, but neither of those things really stuck because, plus size people have a really hard time existing in those spaces. It's gotten a lot better, but in the 90s and in the early aughts, it was so much worse. So those places were never places that I felt like, I was getting to be my best self. I was constantly having to like relegate myself to like costuming. And, when I wanted to be in the limelight, just like everybody else, I didn't want to have to play everyone's mom, like that's constantly what we're telling fat people they have to do in high school theater. My dog's just like sauntering behind me. Sorry. But yeah, so I was constantly looking for art, and it wasn't until my senior year of college that I discovered young adult books. And I've always loved um, entertainment, media, fiction having to do with teens. I really love the coming of age story. I think that we all do, you know what I mean? We all have a soft spot for that type of story. And that really resonated with me. And so I read this little book series you might have heard of called Twilight. And I was like, wow, turns out these sparkling vampires are really gratifying to read about. I don't know why, but they are. But I mean, people say all kinds of things about Twilight. And I always say this phrase, don't yuck my yum. And Twilight was such a yum for me. Yeah. It was ridiculous. I loved it. It was escapist at honestly one of the hardest chapters of my life. And it really sort of made me realize that like, if this Mormon mom could have a dream about a sparkling vampire and write a book about it, and millions of people across the world could fall in love with it, maybe I could write one book that would be interesting or important to at least one person. And so Twilight was the first time that books and writing became accessible to me, because for so long, I think I constantly rejected writing because I thought like, this is something that old white men do, okay. So it took me a long time to realize that like writing is relevant now, and you can write something that means something to someone immediately, and you don't have to be dead. You don't have to be, owning people in a, like, I don't know, just the writing history is very old and racist. So
But you kind of turn that on its head, though, because sure I feel like your characters have these elements of things that are not traditional ingenue characters like you might see in a Twilight or in other YA novels, like these elements of not fitting in, of having unique bodies, unique challenges, in one way or the other. And I feel like that has to be by design a little bit, that we want to put a spotlight on people who are different and maybe not what you would expect as the lead character in a novel. And I love that. I think it's what's making your work so relevant to so many people right now, is that we're not looking at this version of your stereotypical ingenue, but we're looking at real life people that are doing simple things in really extraordinary ways. So congratulations on that. I love the way that you write your characters in the books.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're really done with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we're done trying to like look at our stories and look at our movies and our media, and we're done trying to like put this really like bland, like it's always been like this really bland girl that producers and writers and publishers will hope that anyone can fit themselves into. And we've realized that that's not the path to success. The path to success is specificity. And so I want to know your identity. I want to know your ethnicity. I want to know your personal history. Like, to me, that's what makes a story compelling in any kind of way. Because even if it's not something I personally identify with, it's something that I may not know in my everyday life. And it's something that I'm getting very special access to through the art of storytelling.
I love that.
So, yeah.
So your like shift in your career to go like to this #1 New York Times bestselling author, and now all of a sudden like Dolly Parton's thrown in, like on the Netflix special, and you've got big name actresses like Jennifer Aniston that are, acting in these things, that has got to have been a crazy ride for you. So tell us a little bit about how your life got different, like through that whole process.
So my very first book came out in 2014, and I was a librarian at the time, and I continued to work in libraries until I think the summer of 2015. Dumplin came out late 2015, so around September, and we sold the film rights that summer. And I always said that if I sold the film rights to a book, it would give me enough, like, I don't know, not just actual courage, but like financial courage to feel like I can make a go with this. I'm really fortunate in that I loved being a librarian and I would go back to it in a heartbeat. So I wasn't leaving behind a career that I was like aching to get out of. Um, and that's good because it makes the transition a whole lot less desperate. Because I know I've known so many writers who are like, I have to do this because I can only do this. And writing has never been that thing for me, and I'm really fortunate for that. But yeah, the shift definitely, it's easy to say all those things in one sentence and to feel like it happened so quickly, but in reality, Dumplin came out in 2015, and it did hit the New York Times bestseller list immediately, and that was a wild, unexpected thing. The thing with the New York Times bestseller list that people outside of the industry don't realize is that the requirements and the way that they structure the list is forever changing. So it sounds like this amazing thing, and it is this amazing thing, but it's also this kind of thing where it's like, if my book had come out 2 months before, it would have never hit the list. So it's kind of like this luck of the draw thing in a way. And I was really fortunate in that they changed the structure of how we're looking at book sales. And who is eligible for those things around the time that my first book came out. And so it's really helped a lot of authors' careers explode in a way. And it has really for the last 5 years. That's when a big change happened. And then the movie came out in 2018, I think. So it was this 3-year time span where all these things were happening, and they were like, the not small moments, but they were like small moments along the way for me. But, the public experiences those things all at once. Yeah. So all at once to those people, it's like New York Times bestselling author, Jennifer Aniston, Dolly Parton movie, when in reality, it was this really long drawn out process. I mean, you can ask Jessica, it was like, she sees me every 6 weeks. It's like, what's new? And it's like, nothing. I don't think they're going to make the movie. I don't know what's going on.
Right.
It's not a big deal. I'm trying not to think about it.
Every appointment was some new update of, and honestly, it was really a privilege and an honor to watch it from the outside, looking in, because I saw how much work goes into these things firsthand. And also like, kind of getting to know things before it was super public was like really fun and cool. And, like, I think that people view some really successful people as like this overnight success, and that's never really the story, right? It's never an overnight success. It's years of hard work that gets you there. And I saw that firsthand with the Dumplin journey for sure. So it was really fun to watch.
All very exciting. So in preparation for our time with you today, we've got to spend a lot of time talking about being allies in different communities, because you are so active in the LGBTQ community. You're really active in the plus size community. And I know, for me anyway, have shed a lot of light on ways to be an ally, specifically in the plus size community. And so I'm excited for us to get to talk about that a little bit today, to share some of that exposure with our listeners and our viewers too, because like I said, it's been a real education for me.
Yeah, for me too. And so what we'd like to start with are the terms, as allies, what to use versus what not to use, and maybe a little bit of why, so that this conversation going forward, when we use specific words, at least people know the context as to all that. So if you could do that for us.
For sure. So, I think the best rule of thumb when you're talking about bodies is that you should wait for someone to self identify their body before you choose what kind of language you're going to use in regards to themselves. But for me, I use the word fat and I use it frequently. Um, and I use it positively. For me, the word fat is not a negative word. I think that for so long we have had this idea that fat is an awful, shameful thing. And it's because that word has been used to weaponize, it's been weaponized against so many people to make fun of them, to put them down, to call them fat and lazy. We're so used to the word fat being accompanied with some other negative descriptor. And so for me, when I started going on this journey with myself to embrace my body and advocate for my body just as it is, I decided that I'm going to use the word that was used against me for so long. And I'm going to use it with pride because there's nothing wrong with my body being fat. It's just like if I have freckles or if I have long hair or if I'm thin or if I have knobby knees, like it's just a thing about my body. And so a lot of people will not like using the word fat because there's so much hurt and history built up in that word for them. So a lot of people use the word plus size, fluffy, like curvy, like any word that you could imagine under the sun. The only word that I don't like using is the word obese. I think it's a word that's been used in a medical setting for a really long time to identify and discriminate against fat people, basically. And so it's the one word that I just don't appreciate being used in general.
Okay. Yeah. That was new for us.
Yes.
The fact that obese is maybe a bad word, but at least in conversations with you that fat is okay. Or I believe you said that plus size is also widely typically okay. Right?
When in doubt, plus size is never, plus size is really not one that you can go wrong with.
Okay. Got it.
I know that we talked about obese a little bit, and I was telling a story about when I was really committed to losing some weight at the doctor's office, and I had dropped like 38 pounds. Like for me, more weight than I had ever lost in my life. And I remember going to the doctor's office and looking at the chart on the wall that told you how much your height versus weight needed to be in order to be considered obese. Or there was obviously like a section for morbidly obese. And I was so excited for some reason to go to the doctor and see where I fell on this chart now that I had lost these 38 pounds. And I was still technically obese in this medical, like term. And I remember like the deflation and, like the shame that came attached with that word when I felt like I had been working so hard, and had achieved so much. And so I definitely want to get into a conversation about healthcare because I know that that's something that we have all talked about, the three of us, and just how losing weight and being termed obese and or, plus size or fat fits into medical care nowadays.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead, Julie.
No. I'm just umming. Go on, Jessica.
Well, before we get into the healthcare conversation, I think it's important to say that we all struggle with body image issues. But that you specifically have exposed Laurie and I to this idea that there is a difference when fat people are discriminated against in areas of healthcare, which we want to get into, air travel, discrimination in the workplace, and many other areas and aspects of life that we all struggle, but that it's just different.
Well, because people tell you to eat a cheeseburger. Right. And then people high five me for losing 5 pounds, but that is very different than being discriminated against with a healthcare provider or in a job circumstance. And neither one of us are living that reality in a way that somebody who is fat or plus size may be experiencing it.
Right. So, So let's get into that healthcare conversation.
So a little bit about the idea of like thin privilege and things like that. I think like Lori and Jessica, like you would look at both of yourselves in the mirror and see like obvious body differences between the two of you, but like you both still have like what Lori was talking about, which is like this thin privilege of like being able to move through the world without your body making a significant difference.
Right.
I'm a highly successful person, and I still have to wonder every time if I get on a plane, if someone is going to say something that I'm like encroaching on their space or something like that. And it's going to get me kicked off a plane to stop me from like going to like a very important speaking engagement or something like that. Like the fact that like that's a thing that we're even worrying about or considering is really difficult. I know, Jessica, you were just saying we should get into like the medical fat phobia of it all. I mean, I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this, but my husband, who is much, much thinner than I am, was recently diagnosed as diabetic. And when we first met, he was larger and he rapidly lost a lot of weight. And every doctor we went to was like, high five, you're doing great. This is amazing. Keep it up. Like, you're looking so good, buddy. And they were just never asking him the right questions or doing the right things because we're so used to congratulating weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until this fall that we found out for the last 3 years that his body is not processing sugars correctly. And his body has basically been starving itself. So it's just this idea of like, if you're a fat person, everything that is wrong with you has to be related to the weight of your body. And if you are losing weight, then you're obviously like on the right trajectory. And once you lose that weight, then we can talk about anything else that might be a problem for you. But I mean, I still can't go get a flu shot, or I still can't go just get like, like I have like basically like tennis elbow, but for writers sometimes, because I'm typing all the time, and I still can't get all those things checked out without getting like this grand inquisition of like, are you taking care of yourself? Like, do you like, have you thought about losing weight? Have you thought about weight loss surgery? I mean, I'm a fat lady. I've spent most of my life thinking about losing weight. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just a woman in society. Of course I've thought about losing weight. Like, it's like the thing that's been drilled into my brain since the age of 7. So yeah, I think that we're constantly begging fat people and telling fat people that they have to be more healthy, that they have to be thinner, they have to do all these things to be acceptable to us, but we're not giving them equal access to healthcare, and we're not making those things available to them because we just like, doctors will not have discussions with you about your own body until you're a certain weight, and that's a highly frustrating thing to deal with. And like, for an entire people group that I like work with on a regular basis and who I converse with, and also for me personally in my own life, like it's a very belittling thing to like walk into a doctor's office and be like, I'm a fairly successful person. I kind of have my shit together. But like, that's the one thing. It's like it's the fastest way to like make me feel powerless, So it's a real thing that a lot of plus size people deal with regularly.
God, so much to say about that. I know firsthand from my experience that, I may be thin, but I don't necessarily eat great and I don't exercise. But has a doctor ever cared or asked what my diet is if I exercise? They haven't. I just get a high five every time I go.
Right.
Like, good for you. You've had a baby and you're in your 30s and you look great. Good job. But just because someone is, smaller does not mean that they're healthy. Like, a size does not equate to health at all. And you've definitely opened my eyes to that, Julie, that I do have that privilege because I'll stay up all night eating Reese's peanut butter cups and like eating fast food. And it just, my body is what it is. And no doctor has ever been like, oh, hey, so this is how you take care of your body. Ever. No one's ever talked to me about that.
And it's so much based on like whatever diet trend or fad is out there. Like most of what I've known over my lifetime about nutrition and how food works in bodies is because I read a diet book or because I, like that it is whatever hot buzz topic is going on out there with health and nutrition, when in reality, we're learning so much about what doctors are not reimbursed for in respect to talking to their patients about nutrition, and why, who should we go to for those things? And if you're looking at the plus size community and all they're getting back is, hey, have you ever thought about losing weight? Like that there is so much more information that's available there about your health besides have you thought about it? Like teaching people the right way to learn how their body processes sugar, for instance, in your husband's situation, like that not all weight loss is healthy weight loss. And I can speak to my own experience. Like the way I lost weight was not healthy and had physical, repercussions for me that I wasn't aware of until they were happening. And all I got when I went to the doctor as I was losing the weight was, hey, you're doing a great job and keep on doing that. They never asked how.
And then you had your gallbladder taken out.
My gallbladder removed, and so in retrospect, it's so clear what you're saying, like I can see that whole thing coming to fruition. And I just wish that there was a way. I don't know how to advocate for that besides to tell people like, you've got to go in and you got to tirelessly look for the doctors that are going to work with you, listen to you, help you. And that already sounds so exhausting and draining to me. Like I see why it's easier to just be like, yeah, why?
Yeah. I think there's, unfortunately, it's not very active in our area, but there is a movement out there called the Health at Every Size movement. And there are doctors that prescribe to that. And you can try to find doctors through that network. So there's a lot of efforts to see those things. A lot of nutritionists are definitely starting to get on the bandwagon, and dietitians are starting to realize that diets don't work. This isn't, you know what I mean? If you are trying to take care of your body, a diet is not the right way to do it. Just learning how to listen to your body, learning about intuitive eating. That was a game changer for me. Learning, what made my body feel good, learning that there are no bad foods or there are no good foods. There is just food. Food cannot have, food is just a thing. It can't be moral one way or the other. So I think it's actually, I don't know when this podcast will release, but it's a really relevant thing to be thinking about as we head into the new year. There's all these weight loss New Year's resolutions. Diet industry companies are trying to get your money right now. This is the time of year that is their bread and butter. And it really, comes down to the fact that you only get one body. And if you keep treating it like a rubber band and just stretching it out, snapping it back, stretching it out, snapping it back, it's gonna kill you, So the yo-yo dieting, the last diet I went on ruined my digestive tract. It took me years to be able to properly digest food again. So it's just, I say all that not to scare people or freak people out, but just to say that you can it's okay to find joy in food. It's okay if food is only fuel for you. Whatever your relationship with food is, it's okay. It doesn't have to be this picture perfect Instagram acai bowl, you know what I mean? Whatever you have to do to get by is okay.
Yeah, man. Everything you're saying is just, it's hitting me.
It is my favorite thing that you have said just in respect to diet culture and bodies is just that if you're doing things because you love your body, then that's the way to go, that you can't heal your body and be healthy in your body from a place of hate or shame, that you make choices to eat move be based out of love, then that is ultimately the path that's going to get you to the best body that you can have, and
Yeah.
I think that just sums it up in a really huge way, is that you do what you do because you love it, not because you hate it.
Right. The only path to getting anywhere really with any decision in your life,
Truth.
but what, in respect to diet culture, is doing things out of hatred for your body is just this, it puts out this like negative energy into it. And that I think that doing things out of a place of hate isn't sustainable.
No.
The only way to sustain health maybe would be to do it out of love, like no matter what size that is or what that looks like for you.
Yeah.
So
I think that if listeners are looking for like one proactive thing that they can do to kind of buck up against the norms of how we've been taught to treat our bodies and how we've been taught to look at other people's bodies, my favorite thing to do is when I see someone who I love and value and cherish post a before and after photo of weight loss. Before and after photos are like my biggest pet peeve, by the way, because all you're doing is sending a very clear message to anyone in your life who looks like your before photo that their body isn't valuable, and that for you, their body will always be a before photo. And why do you have to put that, like, if you're truly losing weight for like to better yourself, or you believe it's to better yourself, or it's for reasons that are for only you, then why do you need that outward validation of sharing something like that on social media? So if you are someone who posts before and after photos, or if you know someone who posts before and after photos, I really challenge and encourage people who do those things, or see people who do those things, to see if those people would consider measuring their physical accomplishments in different ways. Like, is weight loss, or is like a 6-pack abs, like, are those the only way that you can say I have accomplished this thing? Or can you say, this year my goal was to run a 5K and I fucking did it, and I'm awesome.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how can you illustrate success in your own body without it always coming down to the fact that at this moment in time, my body was smaller, and at this moment in time, my body was bigger. And when my body is smaller, I'm always winning. Why? Like, what are you saying to every fat person you know? Do you, like, especially if you love and cherish those people, you know?
Well, and there are so many people in the plus size and fat community that, like, love their body, feel and look super hot, and are rocking, like, that. I think the way you feel about it is so much more important than, like, how that projects. And that you look at somebody like a Tess Holiday, or, like,
Oh God, Tess Holiday is like a beautiful example.
But
She's so awesome.
she's only aesthetically beautiful that we look at with our eyes because she is feeling that and loving it and rocking. And nobody can look at her and say, you're not sexy and beautiful and awesome and like, I feel like the more we see people fully embrace and accept wherever they happen to be, it's not like I would ever judge what direction she was with her weight or her style. I just see how she feels about it because it shines through her like that. And that I think is so powerful for our images of all bodies, because you can look at people on the flip side who are also very thin, and that have the being whole body like that. But same thing, like, if they feel it, then all of that other stuff kind of falls away. And so the more that you can share the self-love, and show other people that, however my body looks right now to you, like, this is how I feel about it. That's empowerment on a different level. I think that's really normalizing all bodies, no matter how they happen to look.
Yeah. I think another really big game changer for a lot of people I know is we don't realize how much time we spend on social media, and just scroll through your Instagram feed really fast and look at the people you're following. How diverse is your Instagram feed?
Yeah.
Is your Instagram feed entirely white? Is it entirely thin? Like, what are the bodies that you are normalizing in your brain every day that are bodies that you think are beautiful? You know what I mean? Like, maybe you only think that thin bodies are beautiful because that's the only thing you're showing yourself.
Right.
That's an interesting exercise. I'm going to have to do that.
Well,
honestly.
I think I talked about this several episodes back, that when I was looking at my social media feed, to your point, I was like, it needs to be more diverse. And I was really thinking more about like my own image of my own body size, that I wanted to see more people that reflected the way that I look sometimes. So I wanted to see women who had a muffin top that fell up over the top of their jeans, like I wanted to see things that I wanted to retrain my brain, and retrain my version of what I thought was beautiful. And what I found was that there are so many people out there that are like living it and loving it. And it was so inspiring to me. And now my feed has gotten a lot more diverse, because I'm on purpose trying to widen my version, because I know this was months back when we started working on this episode with you. And like I said, I'd learned so much just about how naive I was to my own perception of like every body being a beautiful body, that now I embrace myself and everybody else so much more, because that's constantly being shown to me on the feeds on the regular. It was powerful to diversify my social media feed. And like you said, I don't know that I really even realized how impressionable I was in that respect until I started to do that. So yeah, I think that's an excellent point for people to take home.
For sure. Do we want to talk about discrimination in the workplace?
Yes.
Because that was new for me.
It was new for me too.
So when we had our initial conversation, Julie, we had talked about healthcare, air travel, but discrimination in the workplace was really new for me, and how fat people are not protected. So what does that mean, really?
Yeah, so there are protections put in place that if you can prove that you have been fired from your job for not every place, sexual identity isn't protected every place, but like gender, race, things like that. But there are no protections in place that you cannot be fired for your body size, or that you will not be hired somewhere for your body size. And there's unfortunately there's not a lot to say about it, because it's just that. Fat people are not a protected group of people. That's why you can say that someone's being kicked off an airplane because they're fat. That's why you can fire someone because they're fat. You can say that they're unable to do their job because of the size of their body or something like that. And there's no set standard available or protections available to fat people for them to say, I think I was discriminated against because of, the size or shape of my body. I'm really lucky that I haven't worked in industries where that's been put into question or put into check. But that said, I've always searched out places where I knew that plus size people were welcome. Right now, I essentially work for myself. I sell my books to whoever will buy them. So this doesn't apply to me in any way now. But when I first started looking at jobs, even, how Jessica, we met a job at the mall. Like, I looked for a place where plus size people were welcomed and cherished, because I didn't want to face the reality of working in a place where I was not valued, because that's the reality for a lot of plus size people.
Yeah, that's wild. We've touched on air travel a little bit. And I know that from past conversations, like, you even have your preferences for when you do travel, right? Of airlines that you prefer versus not, I guess. Because and wasn't it, oh God, what's his name? Kevin Smith?
Yeah.
There was that whole situation. And that was the first time I had ever really heard something about that, where, you have to buy 2 seats. And I just remember thinking, what?
Yeah.
Like it,
Yeah.
and Kevin Smith is, you know, an extremely successful
Actor, producer, director.
yes,
Like, yeah,
like
he's
that. It blew my mind. And so, your experience with air travel.
Yeah,
What
I
is,
mean, I could do an entire podcast about flying while fat and traveling while fat. But so what actually happened with the Kevin Smith thing is years ago, he was on a Southwest Airlines flight and they kicked him off the plane. And it was such bad PR for their company that they completely changed the way that they allow fat people to fly. And so now Southwest Airlines is actually the most fat friendly airline out there. If you just walk up to the counter and say, hey, I got a little bit of cushion in my tush, I think I'm going to need an extra seat, they give you an extra seat for free. And if they have to move people around on the flight, that's something that they have to figure out. And the onus is not on you. So I mean, when you're spending hundreds of dollars to get into a tuna can with a couple other 100 people, the onus should not be on you for like, how is my body going to fit on this? Is this going to be okay? Am I going to get in trouble? The job should always be that of the airline to ensure safety and comfort. And Southwest, they're not perfect, but they're the first airline to really catch on to that. I'm really lucky and fortunate that a lot of places I go now, I get to fly business class. And so that's really changed my life. But even then, sometimes business class seats are very tiny still when you're on like, regional airlines. And so like, I'll even still get on a flight and sit in literally an entire cabin full of like crusty old white guys who have never in their life flown coach. And they look at me like I'm a pariah, like I'm like some kind of cancer. Like, what am I doing in their beloved first class that's separating them from all the peasants with like this tiny little curtain? And God forbid, like my elbow brush up against them or something like that. But there's just this sense of entitlement for some reason when people get on an airplane. And it's because the airlines have like shrunk their seats down and shrunk their seats down so that when you do get on that plane, that seat feels like I paid for this. This is mine. And I get it because it's so expensive. The seats are so tiny. But that should not be a thing that's on air travelers to figure out on their own. That should be something that airlines are starting to figure out on their own, because I shouldn't have to negotiate space with my seatmate when, you have an entire airplane and you can figure that out. So yeah, I just think that we all deserve to go places, we all deserve to experience the world, and we all deserve to like, shit, if I have to go to my grandmother's funeral. I know fat people who have missed like funerals of their loved ones because they're so terrified of flying, who have like tried to drive to go see a dying loved one instead of flying and have missed the chance to see a dying loved one. Like, that's tragic.
That's
and it's because,
unacceptable.
I'm not kidding you. Ask a fat person what they're most scared of, and they'll say going to the doctor and getting on an airplane.
Yeah.
And it's because we are taught for so long that we are not allowed to take up space, that we are like, the space that we have been allowed to take up is a blessing. And we're lucky that anyone allows us to take up that much space to begin with. But I really do encourage fat people and plus size people to take up space and to not be apologetic about it. Like, I'm not going to sit on an airplane and man spread and be all over in someone's business, but I'm also not going to try to make myself smaller than I am, because I physically cannot. like this is the body I have, and I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to the place that we're all flying to because I deserve to go there just as much as someone else does. And I deserve whatever opportunities lie on the other end of that flight just as much as the person next to me does.
Yeah. I almost wonder, these airlines, I'm like, what size do you like? Where are you getting your information from? Because of course I don't have it here in front of me, but the statistics show that the majority of Americans are, as we talk about women's sizes, are like size
14 to 16,
16
yeah, is an average,
plus,
yeah.
that it just kind of blows my mind that they think everybody fits into this one
Micro
size that is so not like.
I mean, fat people know how big airplane seats are, and I can tell you that the average airplane seat is like 16 to 17 inches wide. That's not a lot of space.
No.
It's really not. Like, in my younger years, before I was like loud and proud about who I am, I would just sit there with like my tongue like bit between my teeth as like the armrest of a plane, or bruising the shit out of my hips, trying to survive something so I could like go see a friend or go see family. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to go somewhere. We're all trying to go somewhere. Like, the enemy is not your fat seatmate. The enemy is the corporation charging you hundreds of dollars for a subpar experience.
God, seriously.
Yeah, it's wild. The other thing that we talked so much about, that I learned so much about, was just the shopping and retail aspect, and how different that is for somebody like Jessica or I, as opposed to people who are shopping outside of traditional size norms, like in a merchant. And one thing that I thought was so interesting was, because the median size, hits this like 14 to 16 and up, that there's so many more people that are shopping in that size range, but that so few companies want to commit funds and efforts into growing their size range into a plus size category, which seems insane to me, considering how many shoppers there are that are looking for that.
Yeah, it's like they don't want money. I don't know.
You just don't want my money? Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I think I sent you guys something about like the average American woman is a size 16, and she can only shop at like a very small percentage of stores.
It's true. Yeah.
And well, there are some malls, and malls have hundreds of stores. There are some malls I can walk into and not find a single piece of clothing that will fit my body. And that is wild to me. Like, I'm a clothes horse. I want all the clothing. Yeah. I think that what the clothing essentially comes down to is it sounds like a really kind of like vain, ridiculous thing at first. But the reality is that like clothing and the way we present ourselves allow us to move through the world seamlessly. Mm-hmm. The clothing you put on your body, the way you do your hair, it's the first message that you send to someone about who you are, and how you value yourself, and what you expect those people to, or how you expect those people to value you as well. I want to walk into a job interview and be able to wear the exact same type of clothing that all my peers might wear to a job interview. You know what I mean? Like, I want access to that type of clothing so that I can be successful in the same way they are successful. So yeah, it is a ridiculous and vain thing at times, because I do just want tons of pretty clothes that make me happy, because it's 2020 and I'm trying to fill the hole in my heart with physical belongings. Yes. But I also want the opportunity to look like my friends, or the opportunity to not look like my friends.
Right.
Like, and I want the chance to like build my own style. And when there are 4 stores you can shop at, there's not a lot of room for you to create your own style or your own aesthetic.
Right. And I think that 2 things about that. One, that's why I loved working at Torrid, because, well, back when Julie and I worked at Torrid in the early 2000s, it was much more, alternative.
It's edgy.
It was more edgy. They've definitely rebranded to a little more mainstream, but I loved that style and aesthetic was available to the plus size community, because at least at the time, I don't remember ever seeing that anywhere else. And so that's really why I loved that brand in the first place. But another piece to this that is absolute bullshit is that, along with financial privilege, if you have money and you can shop at a Neiman Marcus, that your sizes just automatically get smaller.
Boy, this is a real thing.
As opposed to shopping at Target or Old Navy, where literally the same body is a bigger number. And there's so much of like a mind fuck around that.
I have clothes that range everywhere from a size 8 to a size 20. And they all fit me, like it just depends on where I bought it, what size.
And how many hundreds of
and
dollars
how much
you're
more
willing to
money-
invest.
Yeah, the 8s cost a lot more money than the size 18s do, like that. It's so weird how I never know what size is going to be for me until you step in and start trying stuff on. And you're like, oh.
Well, and the thing is, Torrid isn't an expensive retailer, but it's like a Gap priced retailer. You know what I mean? So it's not cheap. It's not shopping at Walmart, but the quality, and this is no shame on Torrid. I love Torrid. I love what they do for so many people, but the quality is not the same quality that you're going to get if you go shopping at Gap or Banana Republic.
Right.
Plus size fashion is much more of a fast fashion quality because there are so few options out there, and there are so few actual factories making plus size clothing. I mean, it's crazy. I want to have the chance to go out and splurge on a ridiculous piece of clothing from a designer that I love, but I can't do that because every fat girl since the beginning of time knows we're forever relegated to finding a cute pair of earrings or a cute handbag while all of our friends are trying on clothes in the fitting room, So I just, there's been a lot of growth made in that regard, but it's not enough. And the growth that has been made is to a size 20. So good job for you brands, I guess, but everyone above a size 20 still wants to wear clothes too.
Yeah.
I think it's really, we were talking about being allies earlier, and a really important way that thinner people can be an ally is to put your money where your mouth is and support brands that have inclusive sizing. So brands that go up to a 5X or a 6X or something like that. So if you're looking for a place to get leggings, you should go to Girlfriend Collective. They have an incredible size inclusive line. If you're looking for some incredible jeans, you should check out Universal Standard. They go up to a size 40 in women's sizes. And I'm not talking 40 inches, an actual women's size 40. So really the only way that we're going to get change is to actively spend money in places that are making changes. Because that's the language the world speaks is money. So
I love that. And if you wouldn't mind sending us some of those so that we could put it in the episode notes, just so that that's available to people. Yeah, and we can put it on the post as well, because I had never heard of any of those brands and I would love to contribute to that.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
So I guess one of the things I want to make sure that we get to is how fat people are represented in the media and culture and, because I feel like your writing and then, by relation moving into Netflix is that there's more representation now than there had been. And how do we consistently show and represent more fat and plus size people in the culture that can make it more inclusive, because just talking about social media feeds and, what we read and what we see, that is prevalent in how people absorb what's okay and what's not anymore.
And the reason why I wanted to touch on this is because I grew up with, not a lot of representation as far as a scale of bodies go. And the only time I did see that representation, and I've talked to Julie about this personally, is in a negative way. Yeah. So we're talking Shallow Hell with, Gwyneth Paltrow, and I believe it was Jack Black. I could be wrong, but
it was not Jack Black. Thank God, because I love Jack Black.
Was it not?
No, it was oh gosh, I can't remember his name, but it's unfortunate because I like the actor too.
It's unfortunate. But anyway, I think that a lot of people would remember Shallow Hal, and that that's kind of what I remember of representation of bodies in movies. That's what I was stuck with until, very recently.
Yeah, I think that I have to know. Sorry, everyone. I have to know. It was Jack Black.
I thought it was.
Yeah, that's so sad. I love Jack Black, and I like
I do
Gwyneth Paltrow too. Like, I don't have beef with Gwyneth Paltrow. You're cool, Goop, and all that stuff. Like, I'm down. You can put a weird like amethyst egg in my vagina. I don't care.
Yes. That's for another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we gonna have to rate this episode PG-13? But I think that, yes, we have had like a proliferation of representation yet. But it's not going to be enough for a really long time. Growing up, my icon was Ursula, the fat sea witch.
Yes.
And that's awesome. And that's cool. And I love Ursula. She's based off a drag queen. Like, who wouldn't love Ursula? But
Obviously.
like, how shitty is that as a child, my Disney icon was the evil sea witch? Like, why didn't I get to have a Disney, like an iconic Disney princess to look up to that I felt like I could easily step into her shoes, you know? So we're, you know, I'm actively trying to like make changes and to try to like, you know, bump up against those standards and ask for better constantly. And I know that there are lots of other people doing it too, but it's got to be something for that we find the, like, you know, producers and publishers, they have to see success in it, unfortunately, before it becomes like this widespread thing. I think it's getting better. It's on the way to getting better. But for so long, people thought that in our stories, we wanted to see people that we could aspire to be. They didn't think that we wanted to see people that we could be. And that's just not where we are anymore. Like I love Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts, if you're listening, call me. But we all love Julia Roberts. We all wanted to be Julia Roberts, but that's not how our society works anymore. Like we want to be Julia Roberts because we look like Julia Roberts. We want to be Julia Roberts because, you know, like, it's just, I don't know. We're having this really great cultural moment in our world, and it's time for our movies and books and TV and media in general to catch up to that moment, because the younger generations are hungry for it and they can see through the bullshit. So yeah, I think we're on our way, but it's not there yet.
Well, authenticity, it translates anymore, you know, that, like you said, everybody loves Julia, but that there's so much more to that spectrum, and to be able to really embrace whatever it is that you bring to the table. I know that doing video podcasts, for example, has been a big education for me, where I'm like, oh my gosh, look how awkward and weird you are. Like, stop that, you know? And that
I feel that.
Sometimes it's the awkward, weird parts that people connect to the most, you know, like that it's, that just doing you authentically, whoever that happens to be, is going to give somebody else space to do them too, you know? And the more, and I think that's why, if we're looking at like Instagram lives or people's stories, you know, where they're just like up at 5 a.m. with wild hair and no makeup and they're, you know, crying baby, like that is translating to people right now in a really real way. And I feel like, hopefully with representation in the media on all fronts, that's going to help move that needle further to a space of people being real, instead of people building up this image of who they're aspiring to be one day. Yeah, we can only hope.
So shall we keep going? Oh my gosh, I feel like there's just so much. So I guess like the one thing that I want to end on, before we sum everything up, is, Julie, how would you respond to a critic saying that being plus size is a choice, or that you're promoting obesity?
I've been asked this before. I was actually speaking at a university somewhere, and this very smart man, professor, stood up and said, "What does it feel like to be promoting promoting the obesity epidemic? What is it? Maybe you just said, what does it feel like to be promoting obesity? And I just said, it feels great. Because
good for you, girl.
Because we're out here, we're fat people out here, and no one's been promoting us for a very long time. So I'm ready to promote us. No, I think that, I just like, if there are people out there still asking those questions, like, what year are you living in? Like, why do you hate yourself this much? That's the most interesting thing about you, is that you asked me how I feel about promoting obesity. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have time for you. Like, you are not my people. You are obviously not who I am talking to. And if you look at me and are so offended by me and how I value and respect myself, then that problem is definitely more with you than it is with me. Because if you have a problem with me respecting myself, I can only imagine how much you hate yourself. That just the sheer idea of me respecting myself offends you to that degree. So to them, I would say a lot of things that I probably shouldn't say on your podcast.
No, girl. I mean, I am 100% with you. I think that that's beautifully put and honestly good. I love that answer. I was just in preparing this, I was like, oh my gosh, there's going to be someone out there surely being haters.
Well, but that's also part of why it's so important to like dig into this stuff and have uncomfortable conversations that make people uncomfortable. Like it challenges their status quo and the way that they see the world. And that's the whole point, is to challenge that and open up this little space for them where they're like, oh, maybe there's more to this whole concept idea of people being plus size, obese, fat, overweight, whatever you want to call it, like that there's more to the spectrum than I had considered. And that is the only way that you move the needle forward with some of those people and really push this.
Yeah, and that's at least our hope with the podcast. With any guest that we have on, we just want to open people's hearts and minds to other people's stories and be on a journey together.
And show the immense value that is there in hearing those stories, because I feel like we keep repeating this over and over again, but that we've just learned so much that has value to our own lives that it makes us want to shine a light on this more. So, I mean, we could go for hours,
we could keep on talking, but I feel like we're like already way over our time limit. But so to sum it up, Julie, I think that you put it beautifully that all bodies are good bodies. And I love when you say that, especially in Dumplin. And I think that you were even saying it years ago, even before you wrote it in Dumplin, that especially when it relates to swimsuit season, that everybody is a swimsuit body.
Yeah, man.
Right.
I love that. And I love when you say that, that no matter what is, and I'm using air quotes here, wrong with your body, whatever that means for you, the only way to go about that is out of a place of love, not out of a place of, hate or punishing yourself. Those are my two big takeaways.
Yeah, I think that, like one of the pillars of Julie Murphy is that, like, if you're going to do something, if you want to change some kind of habit, if you're trying to eat differently, if you're trying to work out, all these different things, like your end game can never be just to lose weight, because things are going to happen in your life. You might get pregnant. You might have a death in your family. Like, there are going to be things that happen in your life that cause your body to fluctuate in some kind of way. You might be like holed up in your house for a whole year because there's a global pandemic. You know what I mean? Like,
who knows?
Can happen. Like, just like, you should discover new activities and discover new ways of eating because you find it exciting and because you like the way it makes your body feel, not because you like the way it makes your body look. I would just also very quickly say to anyone listening that if you are the kind of person that's like, how does it feel to be spreading the obesity epidemic? I would really challenge you. And I think that Jessica and Lori could probably link these in the show notes, but just to give a listen to, there's a great podcast out there called She's All Fat. There's also a great article out there that I send people all the time called Everything You Know About Fat People Is Wrong. It's a highly researched, really fantastic article, actually written by a thin person who took the time to really go out there and do some really incredible research. But yeah, thank you all so much for having me. I had so much fun. And let's just continue to challenge everything we think we know.
Yes. And seriously, we have other notes here that like we meant to touch on, but we've already been talking for so long that this may have to be a part two.
Two-parter, yeah.
We may have to book you another time to also get into other areas. And so, Julie, we honor you. We celebrate you. Thank you so much for being a badass and for showing up for everybody in your orbit. And we love you.
Yeah. Continued success. Thank you so much for being here.
Love y'all.
Thank you. All right, badasses. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, don't forget to subscribe. Nope. Words are hard. Subscribe, like, rate, review, share, and share this episode, especially with people in your life.
Anybody that needs to hear this, whether they'll like it or they won't like it, like you should still share it with them because everybody needs to hear. So,
right. Thank you guys.
Carry on.